You're 28 years old, and you are a ghost with a heartbeat. You don't carry a gun, you don't stand on street corners, and you have never kicked down a door at 2 a.m. in a city you can't name. You are a logistics manager for a transportation company in Monterey, a guy with a spreadsheet who knows how to move things from point A to point B. You know which highways have military checkpoints on Tuesdays, you know the weight limits on commercial bridges, and you know exactly how many kilos a modified fuel tank can hold before it rides too low and catches a federal cop's eye. You are the cartel's operational brain, the man who turns their violent orders into quiet outcomes. You know the real names behind 14 shell companies across 3 countries. You know which senators take cash and which harbor masters get paid to not read manifests. You are the most valuable and the most dangerous person in the organization who doesn't carry a weapon. You make $80,000 a month. You moved your mother to a better apartment in a safe neighborhood, telling her you work in international trade. She believes it because she needs to believe it. Just like she doesn't ask why your hands are always shaking when your phone rings at 2 a.m. You are invisible. You've never been photographed, you've never been arrested, and you've never raised your voice in a meeting. Until the Tuesday you cross the border into Texas to visit your sister. You're at a gas station outside Laredo when 2 unmarked SUVs box in your rental car. 4 men in windbreakers step out. They don't draw their weapons, they don't yell, they just open your door and ask you to come with them. They know your name. They know your aliases. They know about the shell companies in Panama and the British Virgin Islands. They put you in a windowless room in a federal building that smells like stale coffee and floor wax. An agent sits across from you. He's in his mid-40s, wearing a cheap suit, carrying the exhaustion of a man fighting a war that cannot be won. He slides a file across the metal table. Inside the file is your entire life. Bank transfers, satellite photos of the warehouse in Sinaloa, intercepted phone transcripts where you discussed a shipment of cleaning supplies that was actually 600 kilos of cocaine. The agent doesn't yell. He speaks with a calm, polite professionalism that terrifies you more than a gun to the head. He tells you that you are facing federal narcotics trafficking, money laundering, and RICO charges. He tells you that your lawyers can fight it, but you will sit in a maximum security cell while they do. And when you lose, you will serve consecutive life sentences with no possibility of parole. Then he offers you the alternative. He says they want the boss, the ghost who runs the Western Corridor, the man who orders assassinations and shoots down helicopters. The agent says you are going to help them. Cooperate, provide intelligence, wear a wire when necessary. In exchange, immunity, witness protection, a new city, a new name, a life where the phone doesn't ring at 2 a.m. You look at the file. You look at the agent. You think about your mother's apartment, the life you built, and the fact that the cartel doesn't accept resignations. You tell the agent you don't know what he's talking about. You just manage shipping routes. He nods slowly. He's heard this answer before from other men who had the same look in their eyes. He tells you to think about it. He gives you a burner phone. He says you have 48 hours to turn it on and make the call, or the indictments get unsealed. You drive back across the border. You feel like a man who jumped off a building and hasn't hit the ground yet. You know the cartel's medical protocols, their enforcement tactics, their brutality. You know what happens to people who talk. At hour 46, you sit in your car in an empty parking lot, staring at the burner phone. You think about a 6x8 concrete cell for the rest of your natural life. You turn the phone on. You make the call. Just like that, you are no longer a logistics manager. You are an informant. You are a rat. You are a dead man walking on borrowed time. The double life begins. You go to work. You sit in meetings with cartel lieutenants, men with neck tattoos and eyes that look right through you. You drink whiskey with men who have ordered the deaths of dozens, and you laugh at their jokes. You manage the spreadsheets, you balance the books that buy the triggers, and you measure the distance between you and the blood in columns and decimal points. And then, twice a week, you use an encrypted app to message your handler. You feed him data points, license plates, shipment coordinates, the operational schedules of rival factions. The first test comes 3 months later. You feed the DEA a route for a mid-level shipment outside Monterey. 400 kilos of cocaine intercepted at a checkpoint. Standard operation. The seizure makes the local news. The stats go up for the DEA, the agent gets a commendation, and nobody in Washington questions it because the numbers look great on paper. But inside the cartel, the temperature drops. 400 kilos is $10 million in lost revenue. The boss is furious. The lieutenants start looking sideways at each other. You sit in a room while the boss demands to know how the Federals knew which truck to pull over. You force your heart rate to stay steady. You force your face to look angry, matching their outrage. You nod along, ask appropriate questions, and suggest increasing security protocols for the drivers. Nobody suspects you, because you are the one who handles the security budgets. You are the fox guarding the henhouse. But the paranoia starts. It doesn't fade, it just changes shape. At first, it's a scream in your head. Then it becomes a low, constant frequency in the back of your skull that never turns off. Every time a cartel member looks at you for a second too long, your stomach drops. Every time your handler asks for more specific intelligence, you feel the noose tightening. The DEA wants more. They always want more. You tell your handler it's getting too hot, that they need to wait. He tells you about the 100,000 Americans who die every year from overdoses. He tells you about the fentanyl crossing the border, the bodies stacking up in Baltimore and Philadelphia. He uses the dead as leverage. The prosecutors call them statistics, the economists call them externalities, and your handler calls them the reason you can't quit. 6 months in, the cartel finds a leak. It isn't you. It's a mid-level trafficker named Miguel. He had a wife and 3 children in a suburb. He was feeding information to a rival faction, or maybe to the local police. It doesn't matter. The organization's evidence destroyer, a man with cold eyes and dry, cracked hands that smell of bleach and hydrogen peroxide, found a digital trail. They don't just kill Miguel. The cartel's product isn't violence, the product is silence. But when they need to send a message, the violence is strategic. They call you to a warehouse on a Thursday night. You stand in the back of the room with 4 other lieutenants. Miguel is tied to a chair. You watch what they do to him. You watch them remove his fingers. You watch them cut out his tongue. The message is literal. This is what happens to people who talk. You stand there for 2 hours. You don't flinch. You don't look away, because looking away is suspicious. You suppress the human part of your brain until it goes dark. Later that night, you go home, drink half a bottle of scotch, and stare at the wall. You think about Miguel's children. You go to the bathroom and vomit. You realize with absolute, terrifying clarity that if you make one mistake, one misplaced text, one look of guilt, one contradictory statement, that chair in the warehouse is waiting for you. The psychological toll is called vicarious traumatization. It's what happens when you spend too long inside the darkness and forget to leave it at the door. You are 29, but you look 40. You've lost weight. Your mother notices and asks if you're working too hard. You pull away from everyone. You stop calling the woman you were dating because every person who gets close to you becomes a photograph in someone's file. Leverage with a heartbeat. You are entirely alone. You meet your handler at a safe house. You tell him you're done. You tell him the cartel is hunting for rats, they are sweeping the houses daily for bugs, and the communications have gone analog. You tell him about Miguel. Your handler looks at you with eyes that have seen too much failure. He tells you that you can't quit. He reminds you of the indictments. He tells you that if you stop feeding them intelligence, the deal is off. And he will personally ensure the cartel finds out exactly who gave up the 400 kilos. You look at him, and you realize the ultimate truth of the drug war. It's a system broken long before you got here. The cartel uses you to move product. The DEA uses you to move statistics. To both of them, you are just an asset, an abstraction. If you die, the handler will write an after-action report, express concern about the compromise of the informant network, and recruit someone else the next day. You are trapped between a machine that will skin you alive and a machine that will lock you in a cage until you die. So you do the only thing you can do. You plan your own escape. You don't trust the DEA, and you definitely can't survive the cartel. You need cash, a route, and a head start. You start skimming. Not large amounts. You build a ghost vendor in the books, a cleaning company that doesn't exist, servicing a warehouse that does. You invoice $8,000 a month, routing it through 2 offshore accounts into a prepaid card registered to a dead man. In 8 months, you stack $64,000. Not enough to live forever, but enough to disappear. You find a blind spot in the logistics chain, a fishing port in Campeche, where the manifests are rubber-stamped and the boats go to Belize. You pay a 60-year-old captain $15,000 cash through a dead drop. He doesn't ask your name, and you don't ask his. Route. Then, you wait for the window. It comes during a massive joint operation. The cartel boss schedules a summit with regional commanders in a mountain town in Jalisco. It's the meeting the DEA has been waiting for. You feed the coordinates to your handler. You tell him the boss will be there at midnight on a Friday. The handler promises that as soon as the raid initiates, an extraction team will pick you up from a safe location. You don't go to the safe location. You know what happens to informants in witness protection. The cartel spends $500 million a year corrupting law enforcement. 2 protected informants were found dead in Arizona and Florida in the last decade, supposedly protected by federal marshals who couldn't protect them from a network that reaches everywhere. On Friday morning, you initiate a ghost day. You fly to Mexico City for a routine banking meeting. You check into the hotel, attend the meeting, and then walk out the service entrance wearing a stolen uniform. You leave your cartel phones and your DEA burner phone in a sewer grate. You feel them vibrate before the water takes them. Each buzz sounds like a heartbeat stopping. You take a cash bus to Villahermosa, then a local bus to Campeche. By the time the Mexican Special Forces launch their operation in the mountains, by the time the helicopters descend, the firefight breaks out, and the cartel boss is pulled from the rubble, you are already 800 kilometers away, sitting in the hull of a shrimp boat, smelling of diesel and rotting fruit. You watch the Mexican coastline disappear into the dark. You land in Belize City. You rent a room above a pharmacy, paying cash. For 2 weeks, you don't leave the room. You sit on the bed and listen to the engines outside, convinced every knock on the door down the hall is the beginning of the end. Months pass. The news says the cartel boss is dead, killed in a helicopter transport. The news says the cartel has fractured, setting half the country on fire, burning vehicles and blocking highways. But the news says nothing about you. You move to a small island off the coast. You work at a dive shop for a Canadian expat. You grow a beard. You become someone else. You are free. The way a man standing in a minefield is free. You can move in any direction. You just can't ever stop thinking about where you step. You never call your mother. That's the part that hollows you out. You imagine her lighting candles at church, wondering if her son is dead or alive. You want to call her, but you know that the moment your voice touches a phone connected to your old life, the clock starts again. The cartel has a long memory, and the DEA does not forgive assets who go off the board. Some nights, you sit on the dock and watch the water go black. You think about the 400 kilos. You think about Miguel in the chair. You think about the DEA agent who bought you bad coffee and told you that you were doing the right thing. You survived. You didn't end up in a ditch, and you didn't end up in a federal supermax. But the cage you built inside your own head doesn't have a key. Every quiet room feels like a threat. Every tourist with a Norteño accent makes your hands shake. You traded one prison for another, and the only difference is the scenery. That's a wrap for today. The story is fiction, but the informant network is real, and the trap is real. Somewhere right now, a logistics guy with a clean record is sitting in a window.
Subscribe and hit the like button. Need your support to produce more interesting content for you.